Former FBI Director James Comey spending more than 6 hours today behind closed doors on Capitol Hill. This was highly anticipated. He was back to respond to more questions that the Republican Majority Committee had for him before the end of their term about Hillary Clinton's email investigation and other issues. But it seems that lawmakers weren't really satisfied with what they got today because they say they didn't get around to asking him a lot of things that they wanted to. So he's going to come back 10 days from now. He has agreed to that. Congressman Matt Gaetz is a member of the House Judiciary Committee and was in the room today. Congressman, thank you for being here tonight. Good to have you with us this evening. So what did he not want to answer today?
Well, the words that best describe Comey's testimony are selective amnesia. There was one part that I thought was particularly interesting. It describes his actions directly following his conversation with President Trump, where he believes the president may have obstructed justice by referencing the Michael Flynn investigation. As soon as Comey's done with the president, he prepares a memo and then meets with his senior team at the FBI. He couldn't tell us who was in the room, who was out of the room, and while he shared that the consensus was that they would not tell Jeff Sessions, they would not tell Rod Rosenstein, they would simply keep the information themselves, he would not share what McCabe's views were, what were the views of Bill Priestap or other people that may have been present. And I think that creates a problem for us because we want to get a sense of what people's viewpoint was during this particular critical moment in time. So that if the statement that the president said was so egregious, you feel that he should have shared it with more people and that perhaps it wasn't shared in a way that made it appear to be a big deal at that time? Is that what you're saying? Well, yeah, so in this sense, Martha, if the President of the United States committed a crime in Jim Comey's presence, it's bizarre that Comey never told anyone above him in the chain of command. And Sessions had not recused himself at this point in time. Comey used a phrase in the hearing today. He called Sessions on the cusp of recusal. And that was Comey's basis for not telling Sessions what had happened. But when you only are speaking to your subordinates, it's a different thing than elevating something that you would think would be ripe enough for a critical decision. Yeah, I can't help but think, this is sort of an aside, but that there is some irony in the fact that James Comey says that the president asked him to go easy on Mike Flynn, right? And now what we've learned this week is that Robert Mueller has asked the judge to go kind of easy on Mike Flynn, you know, which just makes you wonder if maybe what Mike Flynn did wasn't as bad as anybody thought, and maybe that was the president's intention, if indeed he did say that. And it appears to be the feeling of Robert Mueller, which is also based on the cooperation, of course. Yeah, and the point you make highlights the bizarre nature of a lot of these process-based prosecutions. If I were President Trump, I'd pardon Paul Manafort. I would commute the sentence of Michael Flynn and be done with those two, because the only reason those people were prosecuted is because of politics, not because of their crimes. Look, if Manafort was going to be prosecuted as a consequence of his tax crimes or lobbying crimes, that would have happened like more than a decade ago. And you know who was in the decision tree for that? Rod Rosenstein, when he wasn't initially prosecuted. And so Manafort today faces consequence, not a result of what he did, but as a result of his service in the Trump campaign. And that's precisely why we ought to have the pardon power, so that you don't have overzealous prosecutors going after people because of their politics. The president should pardon him right away, take it off the table. Cohen, very different story. I mean, Michael Cohen is being called to account for his present day improper conduct, the things that he's done. And I think in that circumstance, the Southern District of New York may be right that he ought to get a long prison sentence. Well, we'll see. Just back to Comey for a moment here. He said when he came out of the room and he spoke with reporters, the suggestion that the FISA process was abused is nonsense. Well, he wouldn't answer a lot of questions about the FISA process, but I think it's notable that in the information presented to the FISA court, there was not an accurate description of who paid for what. This is another area where Comey's testimony today contradicted his own lawyer. Jim Baker talked about how uncomfortable and weird it was that he had come into possession of the dossier and was part of the chain of custody for that dossier. That's not something that general counsels of the FBI typically do. Today, Comey told us that he never knew that the Perkins Coie law firm was involved in taking money from the DNC and then using that money to pay Christopher Steele to say things and develop a story about the president. And so, like, that's pretty inconceivable to me that the general counsel of the FBI is uncomfortable coming into the chain of custody of evidence that had never happened before, and the director of the FBI somehow knows nothing about it. Yep, another case of selective amnesia. That is very interesting. You know, the other thing is,
the leak of Michael Flynn's name, which, you know, potentially is a crime, obviously, of leaking classified information that was picked up on an intercept between, on a conversation between the National Security Advisor and the incoming National Security Advisor and the ambassador to Russia. Did anyone ask him, did you get a chance to ask him whether or not there was any investigation into that, and whether or not, you know, what he knows about Sally Yates's potential role in all of that? Because she had her hair on fire about Michael Flynn early on.
Yeah, we should have asked more questions, but really a lot of the activity post May 9, Comey did not have information on because he had been terminated. We did ask about Sally Yates, but that was largely in the context of why in the world Comey and the FBI and the Department of Justice allowed people who were associated with Hillary Clinton's criminal conduct to then, you know, be around her and to participate in some of the interviews that were occurring at that time.
What did he say about that? You know, in terms of why Cheryl Mills was given immunity and why he wrote up his document of exoneration before he had even interviewed Hillary Clinton?
Comey's answer was, well, you know, the other people associated with Hillary, we sort of decided they probably weren't criminals, and so, gee, it was unusual, but we didn't think it would hurt the case too much. When you have institutions like the FBI and Department of Justice depart from their normal practices to do these one-off deals for people in politics or celebrity figures, it erodes our confidence that justice is blind and that it's equal for everyone. And I think that you don't have to just take congressional Republicans' word for it. Even the Democrat Inspector General, Michael Horowitz, said that Comey had a problem where he would regularly exceed the role of the FBI director. He would break the chain of command and he would simply take it upon himself to make all the major decisions. We saw that James Comey ego on full display today.
All right, I just want to ask you, one more question with regard to Paul Manafort, and when because you said you believe that he should be pardoned.
Yeah.
Have you read this document that came out tonight?
I was able to look through it, and it's not a function of Manafort's actions. It is why he is before the court. The only reason Paul Manafort is before the court is his association with the Trump campaign, not
but he was
the
investigated.
prior activities.
Okay, I hear what you're saying, but he's investigated within the scope of the Russia investigation. That is one thing that appears to be within the scope. He was doing a lot of lobbyist work for the pro-Russian Ukrainian element in Ukraine. So it appears that he's well within the scope of this investigation, obviously. And it also appears that perhaps there were violations of his registrations for doing work for foreign governments. So you're saying all of that, none of that matters?
None of that is the reason why he is being questioned. Again, like I think that if you have fruit of the poisonous tree, if you have an investigation that's been launched for political reasons, the fact that you find something unsavory about someone should not be used to try to leverage lies about the president. Remember, the reason Manafort had a filing against him by Mueller today is that he did not give Mueller the testimony that Mueller wanted. And so, like, one could reasonably read that to be that Mueller wanted to push Manafort beyond the truth, beyond the facts. Manafort wouldn't do it. Now he faces this serious consequence, perhaps because he wouldn't lie.
But both things could be true. The treatment of him could be completely unfair, and he could also have violated the FARA rules.
Yeah, absolutely right. But I think that if the reason he's being called to account is initially because of politics, that the greater threat, right, to our legal system is that you have political-based prosecutions. The greater threat is not the FARA violation from Manafort.
Thank you very much, Matt Gaetz. Good to talk to you tonight. Thank you for being here.